a scaleless ball python? Finally? Only on Muscle Serpents University. I'm standing here holding a scaleless ball python. And I'm going to tell you the story about why I'm holding a scaleless ball python, one of the very few in existence, because I'm here with Winston Smith of WHS Reptiles, who produced the second, I believe,
Correct.
or is it the second or third scaleless ball python in history?
This would be the, it would be the third genetically reproducible scaleless ball python hatched. And they're the first Pastel and Super Pastel to be hatched. Mike Wilbanks has recently hatched 2 fires as well.
I will say one thing. Yours are the most visibly accessible of any of the scaleless ball pythons in the history of scaleless ball pythons. Congratulations, first of all.
Thank you very much, and we are working really hard to be just as visible as we can be. I really like gathering knowledge and trying to disseminate it. So, we've been doing all kinds of different stuff with these guys. As far as like right off the bat, we did some different things with like heated frozen mice versus room temperature.
Is that so that we can determine if the heat pits are important?
Well, yeah, I wanted to see how receptive they were, because no matter what, the heat receptors are still there because they exist underneath the skin in all snakes. And the heat.
Explain that. All snakes have heat sensors, essentially.
Yeah. So with pythons, boas, and certain venomous, you have snakes that have thermosensory heat receptors, which is a bundle of nerves located underneath the skin. So in order to expose the skin and not have it covered by scales, pythons, rattlesnakes, stuff like that, have what we call heat pits. It's just a hole to expose the skin. So removing the scales from around the skin should have no bearing on the heat receptors.
So you don't really need holes when you have no scales, is what you're saying.
Correct, exactly. And that's also why their faces have a slightly different build, like with the scaleless diamondbacks, same thing, because normally you have these scales that build these big ridges over the nose, so now you just have none of that, so you just have the skull structure itself.
They're cuter now. They're a little cuter.
They are a little cuter. They have like a nose now.
Yeah.
And but to go back to the feeders thing, so we've been feeding these guys live, but I wanted to see how well those heat receptors worked. So we had like a room temperature thawed hopper, and then we had like a super heated one that we had in really, really hot water. Dangled them both, lots of motion, instantly went to the hot one. It struck that thing.
They sense heat.
Yeah, and they both struck at it multiple times, not so much out of feeding, but just like, hey, what the hell's up with that giant glowing red thing coming in my face? So
now, I heard other people say, and I know this is a load of crap, that because they have no scales on the bottom of them.
Yeah, they actually have a really cool belly pattern. And you can see, I don't know if anybody saw that post on my Facebook page, but I had a post about this, what's called the Embryonic Fissure right there. That's where that is, ridge, crease, whatever you want to call it. That is actually, all vertebrates have that in one place or another. And that is where, during embryological development, the actual embryo closed. It invaginates at one point and then closes and goes on to become a blastula. So that's what that ridge is originally from. We normally only see the what's called the umbilical fissure, which is that little tiny cut that you see in the scales.
They absorb the yolk sac.
Yep, and then the yolk sac goes in, it seals up, and they're done. All the rest of that line is just covered by scales.
Right.
And in certain snakes, they all, like colubrids, in vitro, the scales actually develop earlier on in the embryo. So they have, if you ever notice, a bifurcated pattern down their bellies on colubrids. So their scales actually form on one side or the other of that embryonic fissure.
That's interesting. Now, one thing about this snake that I heard you mentioning to other people, because people were saying, oh, it's in pain because it has no scales and it can't protect its body.
Right.
But the truth of the matter is, look, the nervous system attenuates itself. If you take a guy who's on prescription drugs that he's hooked on, like opioids, Percocets, and you take him off Percocets, his skin is going to be super sensitive.
Yeah, and
because it was numb before, and then it dials itself back in. And I'm assuming these are born like this. They probably never had that super sensitization.
Yeah, and I've worked with, I work with other scaleless species as well, and I have for quite a few years. I've never ever noticed those species being more sensitive or seem to be in pain more often. Rat bites happen every now and again, stuff like that. They heal quickly. They do just fine. They don't seem to be any more sensitive than a normal animal. I will say that, or I should say hypersensitive. I will say that without scales, I do think that they can perceive more touch, especially on the belly scales, than like when they're in your hand, you can almost feel they hold you differently. It's completely different because they can crease and wrap around you. They hold you like almost like you would wrap your finger around something. It's very interesting to feel. It'll
be interesting to see when they get bigger too, when they get more muscular, how they move and grab and squeeze and stuff like that.
Yes.
What do you think, realistically, as people out there are watching, most people have no ability to ever even conceptualize buying one of these. This is obviously not for sale. When will the general public, in your mind, get a chance to buy a scaleless ball python? How many years do you think it's going to be?
I would say 3 to 5 because of how, the project had a very unique start. And because of that, I think that it's a more widely disseminated project. So I think that it will be in the hands of people, honestly, relatively quickly, 3 to 5 years.
That is fast.
Because, I think people are going to start breeding specifically for these now. So, anybody that has a girl is now, instead of thinking about making a combo, is probably going straight for the super.
Straight for the super. Now, obviously, the ideal situation would be to have this female and this male and breed them together and get pure, all scaleless heads, since it's a recessive trait.
Yes.
At some point. Almost the way original ball python breeding started.
That's exactly right.
Normal to normal.
But I will be, I'm actually super excited just to see him breeding. Like, that's going to be a milestone right there. And this year was the second year in a row that we've done scaleless corns, and I'll be honest, it does look really cool to see. So,
do you think they'll have any differences in terms of how they lay their eggs or anything like that? Might be easier, right?
I can only go off of what I've seen with other species. It's been no different. I do think that they will hold their eggs far better. And that shivering effect that they do in the wild, if we were to let them maternally incubate, I think would be possibly done even better without scales, just because of that gripping thing I was talking about earlier.
All right, well, here it is. The scaleless ball python finally being presented to the public. And guys, I think we're going to see a great new change in the ball python market. We're going to see a lot more morphs out there, more interest, and I think that you're going to reinvigorate the market. Congratulations.
I really hope so.
Dave Palumbo over here at WHS Reptiles.